Old Chinese traditions hold that reaching a natural death after the age of 80 is considered fortunate and blessed. It signifies a life well lived, and as such, the passing of the deceased calls for celebration. Guests attending such occasions traditionally wear white attire, with hints of red or pink to symbolize the joy and fulfillment experienced throughout the departed's lifetime. While we didn't perceive my father's departure at the age of 89 as fortunate, we acknowledged it as a natural part of the human journey. During my father's wake, we followed the instructions provided by the funeral officers, as my personal beliefs don't strongly align with any particular religion. It was a continuation of the Buddhist rituals observed during my mother's passing 15 years prior. The wake took place in our home for 5 days, after which we proceeded to the same temple where my mother's funeral had been held. Family members, relatives, and visitors paid their respects to my father by offering joss sticks. Some Christian attendees paid their respects by standing silently in front of the casket, with heads bowed. The casket remained partially open, allowing visitors a final glimpse of my deceased father. I remember that a long, sizable joss stick needed to be continuously lit for 24 hours a day. To ensure everyone could rest, we enlisted a funeral staff member to monitor the joss stick during the night. Throughout the first 3 days, numerous funeral bouquets, wreaths, and flowers were delivered, primarily from my father's association, friends, and my brother's business contacts. As the funeral drew closer, I noticed my father's face taking on a glossy red hue. On the 5th day, as the chanting ritual neared its end, my younger sister and her husband initially refused to wear the white t-shirts provided by the funeral company. They also hesitated to approach the casket or join the chanting session. Kneeling before my father's casket, my siblings and their children awaited the officers who would transport the casket to the funeral car, ultimately taking it to the temple for cremation. In a quiet voice, I said, "Dad, you claim to have superpowers. Why don't you command your daughter to join us?" Astonishingly, my sister and her husband donned the white t-shirts and suddenly appeared, kneeling behind me. I hadn't realized that it was the power of my father at work. On the 2nd day, as the ritual master spoke to me, my sister suddenly broke down in tears, kneeling before the master to confess her actions. The master, however, redirected her, saying, "You shouldn't kneel before me. Instead, show respect to your deceased father, who took good care of you when you were young." I can only say that my late father had exerted his power. In Chinese culture, regardless of their religious beliefs, it is widely believed that the spirits of the deceased will return home on the 7th day after death. Some people have even conducted experiments by placing flour near the altar at night, only to discover footprints on the flour, confirming the presence of the departed. Personally, I did not attempt this experiment, finding it somewhat absurd or perhaps fearing what I might discover. Additionally, I have heard countless ghostly stories associated with the 7th day after death. Living alone in a house without my father's presence or his bed, I suddenly felt a profound emptiness. My heart grew cold and filled with a sense of fear. In the evening around 7 p.m., I received a phone call, but the voices on the other end spoke in a regional Chinese accent. I repeatedly said, "Hello, hello," for a few minutes, but no one responded. Fear began to grip me, and I hastily made myself a cup of hot tea before retreating upstairs, locking the door to my room. It was the first time I experienced such a powerful sense of fear. The first phase of the funeral spanned 49 days. I vividly remember preparing simple vegetarian breakfasts and lunches, consisting of 7 dishes, to offer prayers for my father at home. On the 49th day, the Buddhist priest carefully placed my dad's precious incense ash into the ancestral golden incense burner, symbolizing his spirit's return to the company of his ancestors. The altar underwent a transformation, bearing my dad's and my mom's names, signifying their role as caretakers of the ancestral spirits. On the 1st day and 15th day of each lunar month, Following the Taoist customs my mom practiced, I would arrange 5 different offerings on the altar: incense, flowers, 2 lamps replacing 2 candles, Chinese tea, and fruits. While I may not identify as a Taoist, I hold a belief in Taoism and faithfully follow the practices my mom taught me. To me, incense serves as a medium for communicating with my ancestors. Each time I pray, my only wish is for their well-being in the afterlife. If they desire my presence, I hope they will visit me in my dreams. In Singapore, the act of burning money and materialistic items as offerings is a prevalent practice during events like the Hungry Ghost Festival or funerals, primarily within Taoist and traditional Buddhist traditions. Even when my dad was bedridden, he emphasized that there was no distinction between Taoist and Buddhist practices. When his close friend passed away a year before him, my dad reminded me to burn money for him as well. Perhaps it was his way of honoring the departed. With my siblings following different religions, I was the one tasked with making the final decision. Since my dad had previously burned paper money, paper cars, and even a double-story house for my late mother and grandmother, I followed his practice without hesitation. About 1 to 2 weeks after the first phase of funeral, my dad appeared in a dream and urged me to bring my grandmother back from China so that we could take care of her more easily. I shared this with my elder brother and his wife, suggesting that we return to my dad's hometown to pay respects to my grandmother. She had lived with us in Singapore for almost 40 years before returning to China at the age of 97. Unfortunately, she only spent 9 months there before her passing. My grandmother had concerns about cremation, insisting that her body be buried in the soil. The second phase of the prayer ritual took place 2 years after my dad's passing, which my aunt referred to as the 3rd year of the funeral ceremony. This ceremony aimed to honor and celebrate my dad's contributions to our family and friends, hence its name, Gongda in Chinese. According to tradition, once a person passes away, the following year is considered the 1st year, making the ceremony in the 2nd year as the 3rd year. During this prayer session led by Taoist priests, a sumptuous feast was prepared with offerings such as roasted meat, chicken, pork, vegetables, and fruits. Once again, we burned paper money, paper cars, and even a double-story house as symbolic gifts for my late dad. Our hope was that he would enjoy a prosperous and peaceful life in the realm beyond. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not a religious person, but I find myself drawn to the teachings of Taoism, the way of life. While I'm unsure about the existence of a higher power, in my mind, a deity should be someone who has done good and brought benefit to society, deserving respect. My dad would always remind me, praying to our ancestors is a part of our Chinese tradition. We don't need to question why we do it. Just follow the customs, or else we risk losing our identity. Let me repeat again. The Chinese rituals such as burning joss sticks and candles or lamps are believed to be a form of spiritual communication. The act of lighting candles and burning incense serves as a reminder for the living family members to honor the way of life lived by the departed. It prompts us to uphold the values of virtue and wisdom, allowing us to move forward while cherishing their legacy. My last unexpected encounter with the spirit occurred after my dad's passing, during my visit to China. I will continue this story in the next episode. If you have had similar experiences, I encourage you to share them with me. As a former scientific researcher specializing in lasers and optical studies, I have always placed my faith in scientific results. However, these experiences go beyond the realm of science. I still don't understand why I am the only one who can see these apparitions while others cannot. Stay tuned if you want to learn more about what I have witnessed. Thank you.